Welcome to Everyday Grace TV, where there's story, there's grace. I'm Jay Locklear, and it's great to be with you once again.
And I'm Abby Martin, and on this episode of Everyday Grace, we will be exploring physical health. This is the second of a pair of episodes about health, and last month's episode dealt with mental health. You can watch that episode along with all of our past episodes on our YouTube channel.
Thanks, Abby. We're excited to share with you a collection of stories gathered from all around North Carolina, all providing unique perspectives on physical health and how it impacts our whole lives. Later, we'll be joined in the studio by Belton Joyner, our resident storyteller and theologian.
And don't forget that we want you to be a part of this conversation and to share your stories as well. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Everyday Grace TV, and find us on Facebook as well. We would love to hear from you.
Coming up next, you'll have a chance to get acquainted with our co-host, Abby Martin. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Everyday Grace. We're going to take a few minutes and get to know our co-host, Abby Martin. Abby, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Abby, what I want you to do is just take a few minutes and tell us about yourself.
Well, Jay, I am currently the North Carolina United Methodist Conference president. My home church is in Clayton, North Carolina. I go to Horn Memorial United Methodist Church. I also am a senior this year, and I attend Johnston County Middle College. And next year, I'll be going to UNCW. Go Seahawks.
Fantastic. So in putting together these two episodes, one of the consistent ideas I keep hearing is that there are connections between our physical, mental, and emotional health, maybe more than we would assume at first glance. And the issue of balance or being out of balance is a real concern when it comes to our health. So I want to ask you a question. You're a busy person with a lot on your plate, like you just told us, including heading off to college in a few months. With everything that you have going on, and you're probably not alone among your peers, how do you keep everything in balance? Is it easy or is it hard?
Well, Jay, it's funny you asked that. It's actually really hard. At the beginning of my senior year, I told myself after getting elected president that I was going to take a step back and figure out what I needed to do, what I really needed to focus my time on. And I remember after a few months of senior year, I was like, all right, I got this. I was president of a leadership club at school. I was working retail, and I thought that I was getting through it. But after those few months passed, everything started adding up on each other. And I felt like the definition of blah. Like I was walking through this grayscale, and I remember talking to my mom and saying, I don't know what to do. I feel drained. I'm not going to bed until 12:30 because I was getting home at 12 o'clock at night from work, and then having to go to an 8 o'clock class the next morning. She told me, she was like, if you need to take a break from your job, I understand that. Well, it did, and months passed, and everything started going back to normal, but I didn't feel that connection with God. I still felt like I was going through the motions, like something wasn't there. And so I remember telling my mom that I was still feeling like I was walking dead almost, like there wasn't that color. And so I talked to my youth pastor, and he told me that there's a point where you have to scale back. You have to focus on your connection with God, your mental health, and your physical health, and really see what God is directing you to do. And he also told me, God is going to open up all these doors. Everybody has talents. God gives us these talents to use, and there's so many opportunities that he puts in front of us. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. That's exactly what I'm feeling. And I then thought, maybe I can't do everything.
Right.
And he told me, he was like, you're right. God doesn't want us to take on way too much. He wants us to do what he's telling us to do. And he said, maybe that's where you step back, pray to God and say, Lord, you're in control. Show me what it is that I need to take on. You got 10 things out in front of you. Maybe it's you take on one thing and put all of your passion and your time into it. And then maybe you take on 2 things. But the real honesty is you don't have to do everything. You just need to put what you're passionate about and put your faith into God, and he will take care of you. And I went and told this to my youth group. My youth pastor told me to maybe share this with everybody because, of course, they are understanding. We're all high schoolers. Right. We're all going through this. And I told them, I said, when I wasn't taking a step back and focusing on God and what he wanted me to do. Like I said, I felt like I was the definition of blah. But when I took the time to focus on God and what he wanted me to do, it was like getting a new pair of glasses. It was like I went to the eye doctor when I was younger and I got the glasses. I went through the motions of like, does this look better? Does this look best? And as soon as I walked out of the eye doctor, it was like I could see what a tree looked like. I could tell what a stop sign was. I could see everything in color. And that's what it's like when you are connected with God. Everything is in color. So I say, when you have all these opportunities and you're in high school or just in life in general and you're trying to balance things out, take a step back, put on your new pair of glasses, and connect with God.
Abby, thanks for sharing that. Coming up, we're bringing you a story that's different than anything we've shared before on Everyday Grace. We're going to hear from a husband and wife who share with us how their life changed and continues to change because of a very significant diagnosis almost 3 years ago.
How do you live with passion? How do you make impactful decisions? How do you find balance in light of what is now the new normal? You'll hear answers to all those questions as we talk to Marty and Danelle Cauley. This is Everyday Grace TV.
So about 3 years ago, in summer of 2013, we went on our first planned multi-day vacation. In the middle of the vacation, we ride this old rickety wooden roller coaster and take a couple of hard hits. I think I'm having a gallbladder attack or an injury or broke a rib, and it comes to find out that I have terminal neuroendocrine tumors. Neuroendocrine tumors are a rare disease. It's terminal, which means that I will die from it or from some complication of it. And it's a slow-growing cancer that multiplies over time. Most people who have neuroendocrine tumors don't find out until the tumors have already metastasized, and mine have. My primary tumor is in my small intestine, but it has metastasized to my liver and other places. I have about 35 to 50 tumors total. And the total mass of my tumors is about 17 centimeters. So it's almost like a salad plate. All the treatments are really palliative. That means that they control the side effects of the tumors, but they do cause maybe off and on a little shrinkage. And you simply take that treatment until it quits working, and then the tumors start to grow again. They become resistant to the treatment. There is no cure. It is non-operative, which means they're not going to do surgery on it because there is no benefit to the surgery. The risk of the surgery far outweighs any benefit that you'd get. That's our diagnosis that we got in 2013 and that we're living with every day.
Welcome to Everyday Grace TV. We are here in beautiful Rocky Mount, North Carolina at First United Methodist Church, and today I'm joined by Marty and Danelle Cauley. Guys, it's great to be here with you. We're talking about physical health on this episode, and so we're going to share a very interesting story. Normally, we only work with one person at a time, but you'll see why in just a few minutes why we have both Marty and Danelle here with us. So I'm actually going to go to Danelle first. And Danelle, in the book that Marty wrote called Dying to Go on Vacation, where he talks about receiving this diagnosis of cancer and what that journey has been like, you actually wrote a chapter of the book. And in that, you make a very interesting statement. You talk about some friends of yours who received a diagnosis of cancer about a year after Marty received his, but you referred to this couple and you said they received a diagnosis of cancer. The wife was the one who was actually diagnosed with melanoma, but you referred to them plurally. And so that struck me because what I hear you saying is these kinds of diagnoses, it impacts the whole family. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, it absolutely impacts the whole family. And when I was writing that chapter, I didn't even realize I was using that language.
Right.
So the first moment that I'm aware that I used they is because you pointed it out. So now I'm gonna have to go back and reread that chapter of the book. The impact that a diagnosis like this has on a family, everybody's involved.
Right.
The spouse, the kids, the in-laws, the cousins, I mean, everybody. Of course, the couple most directly involved because you're on the journey together. And all of the things that happen impact both of you. And the daily struggles and challenges that come with a cancer diagnosis, that's both people dealing with that and sharing that load as we're meant to do. So I'm going to reread and find out where I said that.
Well, it's a seismic shift in your entire family dynamic.
Sure, yeah.
Everything changes. How you interact with your children changes. How you interact with each other changes. How you interact with the world changes. And it's really easy, if you're not careful, to cocoon, to like close up and shut down and push everybody away. And we do that from time to time. But at the end of the day, you have to keep living. And the only way you can keep living is by living together. Because what you realize is that you have to be far more interdependent than you ever imagined.
So in talking about everything changing, seismic is a good word. In looking at that, what has been the most unexpected thing, the most out of left field thing that you've encountered since you got that diagnosis?
I've thought about that a lot, and I really think it was, we have friends who my diagnosis challenged their faith so much they essentially kind of stepped away from our friendship.
Wow.
We initially, of course, everybody comes and it's like, what can we do to help? And but when they realize that you're not going to get instantly healed, or and having, of course, I have a rare form of cancer that is terminal and incurable at present. That challenges people's spiritual and life worldview. The pastor has terminal cancer. What does this mean for my faith? And how it challenged them, and I think it really struck us. And it was not just one or two; it was 3 or 4, maybe more, folks who the terminal diagnosis was so challenging to their faith that they literally took a step back from our relationship because they didn't know how to handle us handling terminal illness, and they didn't know how to handle it that we weren't rolling over and just letting it
it's falling apart
all the time. Don't get me wrong, Jay, we fall apart.
Sure.
We're good at that.
But the idea is that you have to decide that after you fall apart that you're going to kind of get back up and make the best of the next day.
I think too that for some people the diagnosis time was a time where they pulled closer to us, but as the journey is long, it's
over
just
2
a
years.
long journey, and that's, I think, what had people that were less comfortable have to step back.
Sure.
And it doesn't get better. It just kind of either stays the same or gets worse slowly. It's like the sand going out of an hourglass. It's going out very slowly, but it's going out.
Right.
I look in the mirror and realize, wow, I'm 50 pounds lighter than I was, and that a lot of that is loss of muscle mass.
Yeah.
This morning we were picking some things up, and I said, man, I remember when I could pick up twice this amount. But you don't notice it little at the time.
Now, I actually have a different thing that's the most unexpected thing. That I wasn't thinking of that. That's pretty unexpected too, and maybe I would have thought of that. But I think it surprises me what people say to people who have a terminally ill husband. It's very interesting, the things that people will say to me. And I think one of the things that gets repeated is, you're just so strong, you're so strong, you're so strong. And I'm thinking, well, what's the alternative really? I mean, we have our moments where we just like hold each other and cry, because you're gonna have to have those. But what are we supposed to do besides be strong?
Be strong, carry on. Right?
I don't really know what they're expecting it to look like, and we don't have a manual showing us what to do next. So we just pick up and keep doing the things that are most important to us.
But both of you are very passionate people. That's obvious. And I know, Marty, one of your mantras has been for a long time, live passionately. When there is only so much energy, physical energy, emotional energy, mental energy, but there are many things that you are passionate about, and you want to involve other people and share your knowledge and share wisdom and share your experiences with other people. How do you balance being able to say authentically and honestly, live passionately with what you know are limitations that will only increase as time goes on. How do you balance all of that out?
Well, I think, first of all, most of us live passively, not passionately. We wait for things to come to us. We don't make proactive decisions. We make reactive decisions. We live our whole life reacting to other circumstances, reacting to other people's initiatives. Living passionately begins with like having a to-don't list.
Right.
It also begins with having what you actually want to do. But it requires us to set priorities. I mean, we have to decide what is ultimately important in our life together, in our relationship life, in our time together, in the resources, the limited resources we have. When you have a physical illness, a terminal illness, or any kind of chronic long-term physical problem, it costs a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so that depletes your financial resources.
Sure.
So we have to also manage those. But what it means to live passionately for us, I think, is really just you establish your priorities, and then you work from the top down. You have to actually sit down and decide what is the most important.
Because if you don't, somebody else will.
Right.
Well, and that's true. And in the past, before the diagnosis, we both have full-time jobs, but we also were serving as adjunct professors at the college in town. It's a smaller private school and a Methodist college, and it did not have enough folks in this town with the education level to help the next generation. So we both are fortunate and blessed in that area. So we were both teaching there for a while, and one of the things that we had to decide is, okay, is Marty going to have enough energy to keep teaching adjunct plus his full-time work? And the answer to that was no. Like, that needed to go. Even though it was a great place for him to make an impact on people, we had to just let that go. Also, there were semesters where I was teaching my full-time job, but also then teaching part-time, half-time as a professor, and now I try to teach just one class maybe a semester, so we're still making that impact on the next generation.
Sure.
But it looks different because there's only so much of us to go around, and a huge chunk of who we are gets absorbed into dealing with the journey of the cancer.
Right. Well, I mean, when you have a chronic or a terminal illness, it's another job.
Yeah.
I mean, Duke schedules us, hours every month.
Right.
And not to mention the commute, the hour-and-a-half commute each way. So we'll go to Duke this Friday for a treatment, an oncologist appointment, and that's pretty much it. We'll drive an hour and a half there. We'll start there at 7 o'clock. And if we're lucky, we'll be out by 1 and then have another hour and a half drive back. So that pretty much takes care of the whole day.
Yeah.
And that's at least once a month. Sometimes twice a month. If I have an attack, 3 times a month. And the other surgeries and things that have gone along with the disease. So when you have a physical ailment, it's like having another job. And it demands its attention.
Right. I think the tendency would be to spotlight the diagnosis and say, this is what's going on, and there are all these other things that are attendant to that waiting, the schedules, the figuring out how we're going to balance work and life and everything else. It's more than just, here's a diagnosis and that's all that there is.
Right. Well, the thing is, though, but your physical health affects your mental health, which affects your spiritual health.
Right.
It is, we're Trinitarian beings, body, mind, and soul. And when one of them is out of alignment, it disrupts the alignment of the other two.
Right.
I
It's
mean,
inevitable.
You spend enough time with insomnia or whatever the symptom is that you're dealing with physically, then it starts to wear upon your mental health, and if you're not careful, you can easily fall into depression, and then you can start having serious crisis of faith, and then that can kind of weigh into making you feel worse. And then that can kind of feed into the depression or those kind of things. And if you're not careful, it can your life can unravel, and from any one of those being out of alignment.
Right.
And I think we try to live in the normal as much as we can, but it's a new normal, because even when we're living in the normal, it's always there. It's never not there. So I think it colors everything. It changes everything.
Marty, Danelle, thank you so much for being here with us today, taking time to share all of this with us and with our viewers on Everyday Grace TV. Marty's book is titled Dying to Go on Vacation. I greatly encourage you to pick up a copy of it. You can get it in good old paper and ink, or you can get it electronically as well. We're back on Everyday Grace TV. It's a pleasure once again to be with Belton Joyner. Belton, it is good to be with you.
Thank you, Jay. It's good to be here. Always a good place to be.
Oh, yeah.
We shared a variety of stories on this episode of Everyday Grace TV, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on physical health.
Physical health. Let me come at it this way. The other day, for some reason, it was back in February, and I guess I was getting cabin fever. I decided that I wanted to figure out how many days I had lived. Well, it's easy enough to tell someone how many years old you are, but it takes some arithmetic to calculate how many days old you are. I allowed for leap years and even took into account the time of day I was born, and it turned out to be 29,473 days. Don't you think I ought to get a blowout birthday party when I have my 30,000 day birthday?
I'm expecting an invitation.
Am I expecting you to come and bring a gift?
Of course, of
Yes,
course.
Yes, yes. Well, when I figured that out, I sent my sister an email telling her how many days old I was, and she wrote back, "How many times has your heart beat in all those days?"
Wow.
Well, now that took some serious math, and math is not my long suit. So first I determined how many minutes there are in a day. 60 minutes in an hour times 24 hours in a day. Then I multiplied that by the 29,473 days to find out how many minutes I had lived. Then I discovered that the average heart beats between 60 and 100 times a minute. So I used 80, figuring over the years, 80, not counting the times he did skip a beat when Tony and I got married. And that gave me the answer. How many times had my heart beat since I was born? Of course, the absolutely correct answer would change with each heartbeat, but I got as close as I could. Drum roll, please. Since when I was born, up until that day in February, my heart had beat 3,389,457,932,612 times. 613 times. 614 times, 650, well, you get the idea. You know, we do get intrigued, don't we, about our health and well-being. We really do. What a gift it is to have a heart that so far has beat well over 3 trillion times. But most of us will admit when push comes to shove that life is not really measured in quantity so much as in quality. And that quality, Scripture seems to say, is measured not just by how good life has been for us, but how good we have helped life be for others. Jesus didn't make any separation between love of God and love of neighbor.
Wow.
Right. So along with the challenge of finding balance between physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, I know that an aspect of remaining connected to those around you, does that factor into our health as well?
Indeed it does, because relationship is at the heart of good health. Relationship is at the heart of good health. And you mentioned physical health. When you talk about physical health, the Bible is jam-packed with examples of persons who are burdened with all sorts of physical limitation and illnesses. I suppose it's not very different, in our day. The other day, I was looking through a magazine that's designed to help families have good lives. The magazine has 124 pages, and 25 of those pages were advertisements for medicines. A magazine intended to help families have good lives, and more than 1/5 of the pages are devoted to ads for pills and capsules and drugs. We so much do want to be in good physical health.
Indeed.
But it doesn't always happen, does it? Recently, I had lunch with a pastor friend who lives in another part of the state, and he had driven more than a couple of hours to visit a member of his who was in a hospital near where I live. So while he was in town, we got together, and he told me a most amazing story. While he was at the hospital visiting his member, that member was taken out of her room to get some special tests. So Michael, that's the pastor's name, He moved out just a waiting area and just sitting there. When a woman came up to him, she said, "I see you have on a clergy badge. Are you a pastor?" He said, "Yes." The woman said, "I know you don't know us and we don't know you, but will you come pray with us, with me and my family? We're going to be with my mother while they come and shut off her life support systems."
Wow.
And he joined that family in that sacred moment, praying peace for the dying mother and peace for the family, who had agreed that the best healing for the mother was to close down the machines that kept her alive, only in a literal sense of the word. And she died as this stranger pastor held her hand. Was that healing? Was that a new gift of health?
That's powerful.
You know, it is a mixed bag. Every sick person in Jerusalem was not healed when Jesus walked in that city. Every sick person in Galilee was not cured when the great physician moved on those streets. What Jesus did do was to signal that the kingdom of God is like this. It's what the kingdom of God is like. In the ministry of Jesus, we get a glimpse of the kingdom that is to come as we pray, "Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven." When some people were healed, Jesus gave us a glimpse of that kingdom.
So it sounds like this ministry of healing then was very much both a now and also a not yet.
That's a good way to put it, Jay. I think the prophet Isaiah saw that coming. He described a suffering servant, and we've come to understand that this suffering servant is Christ, the Messiah. Here's one thing Isaiah said about the one that we call the Christ. I think it's in the 53rd chapter of Isaiah. "Surely he has borne our infirmities and carried our diseases." We say, what? Christ carries our infirmities? Christ carries our diseases? That's a powerful gift. When I'm sick, I'm not sick alone. Jesus Christ is sick with me. When I am broken, I'm not broken alone. Jesus Christ is broken with me. When I'm infirmed, I'm not infirmed alone. Jesus Christ is infirmed with me. And the good news in that is that we're not alone in these difficult moments of illness. But there's more than that. The good news is that in Jesus Christ, we have seen a triumph even over death. And that's a promise of healing that these days cannot take away.
Belton, as always, we thank you for sharing your valuable wisdom with us, not to mention quite a few of those heartbeats that you calculated on this episode today.
Thanks, Jay. And the heart's still beating.
That's good.
Yeah.
We hope that you've enjoyed hearing all the stories we've shared on this episode. And let me remind you that you can share your stories with us on Facebook and keep up with what's going on Twitter and Instagram.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Everyday Grace TV.